And hello there, my name is David Postansky and welcome to the Extreme Improv Skills Show. So, hello there out there in audio land. This is another exciting episode of the Extreme Improv Skills Show. They haven't been super regular of late just because we've been so busy with our live streams. It feels like a lifetime ago now, but last month we had the Extreme Improv Extremed World Championship Tournament as part of a larger festival. And I truthfully was hoping that we'd have lots and lots of skill shows episodes throughout. We had lots of workshops, we had lots of shows. More shows than I have ever done, ever. More shows that I was then in charge of from other companies. We had some great stuff. So it did unfortunately mean that I didn't get to do as many of these episodes as I would like. But we are here today, we're back, and better than ever. Today we're going to be talking about making bold choices. So if you're listening to this and you want to learn how to make some bold choices on stage, whether it's performing improv, whether it's at an audition, whether you're doing short form, long form, hopefully these will be some food for thought for you, and it will give you some insight into some techniques, some tactics, some tips for what you need to do to make some bold choices. Now, and to begin with, I don't want to say stuff that's going to be controversial or go against what other people may say, other improv teachers, because everyone has their own style, and you may have your own style, and if what I say is the exact opposite to what you want to do, that's absolutely fine. If what I have done is just solidified into your heads to do something completely the other direction from what I say, then I helped you in that sense. I helped you go the other direction with it, and that's all okay. But for me, I have noticed that some improv teachers will heavily focus on truthful performance. Don't try to be funny, don't try to do something big and over the top, and they're absolutely correct. However, where I feel that there could be a perhaps slight perspective change even in their thinking is that we're trying to create an entertaining show. On some level, you might just be trying something out in a workshop and just be trying to discover something of a character, and that's fine. But for the most part, if you are performing improv on stage or whatever other medium, be it on a podcast or on a stream or whatever, on film, you're thinking that there's going to be an audience watching you. And for me, I then turn to where else do audiences go to see things? They go to the cinema, they watch Netflix, they watch television, they listen to the radio, they listen to audio dramas, and for the most part, the stories told there are scripted. And they have been scripted in advance, obviously, because otherwise it'd be improv. And they've been thought out and edited so that they are as exciting, as dramatic, as bold, as fine-tuned as possible. When it comes to improv, obviously you can't edit things in advance. You can't before the audience gets there. You have to do it live. So in that sense, the performer on stage becomes their own scriptwriter. They become their own director, and you have to be able to make decisions on the fly. Now, something I'll often do in an improv show is I'll have a bit of fun with the audience if I'm the MC. I might ask them for a suggestion of something exciting, for example, and that will inspire the scene. And if they say to me, you're in a car chase, great, to me that sounds exciting. If they say to me, and I've asked for something exciting, and they say, getting home at the end of the day and just not have to do anything, that's exciting. I might occasionally make the joke to the audience that tonight the show could have been about anything, but the audience have selected that it's a scene about sitting at home after a long day and doing nothing. Now, of course, a seasoned improviser can develop that into a great idea, no doubt, but from the audience's perspective, what they have asked for is for you to do a scene about being home and doing nothing. And if you take that on face value, is that the most bold idea you could go for? Or will you inevitably do something to punch it up? Will you inevitably use that as a starting point that then develops into something bold and exciting? Now, from a performer perspective, I have often seen other performers get an idea and they make something that could be exciting, dramatic or bold, more normal, more ordinary, and I don't think that's actually what the audience want. Because even though an audience may say, oh, I like the idea of getting home, putting my feet up with a cup of tea, to me that's really exciting. Now, if that was pitched to them as, do you want to go to the cinema tonight? There's going to be an amazing film. It's about a guy who goes home, puts his feet up and have a cup of tea. No one would go to see that film. No one would. So I ask you to put into your own headspace, into your own thoughts now. If I was going to go to see a film at the cinema, or if I was going to pick up a book in Waterstones or whatever your bookshop is, wherever you are around the world, and I was going to read what's this about, is it going to be something that I myself would like to see? Or is it something that I think loads of people may like to see? Now, this doesn't mean that you have to do something to please the masses. You can do something which is a bit more niche. You can do something which is a bit more perhaps personal or whatever. And they're all fine. But this podcast, the idea of it today, is saying about making bold choices. So once again, I'll reiterate to you that the idea I'd like to put across is that you, on stage, doing improv, are your own scriptwriter and you are your own director. And more than that, you're your own editor, but you have to edit in advance. So if you are given a scene that you're going home for a cup of tea, I'd put to you that more likely than not, you're going to do something to develop it and to take it into some exciting, weird, wonderful, quirky direction. You're not just going to do that, because that ultimately isn't going to be what you want to do. It's not going to be what you'd want to see. It's not going to be what the audience may want to see. If you had the promise that you could go to see a musical, and it's going to be, let's think, I like Young Frankenstein the musical. That took a very funny, exciting film and it made it into a musical. So you could do a scene in improv that's going to be about the Frankenstein's monster and bringing dead bodies back to life and villagers rampaging. Or you could do something where someone's filling out their tax return. That's an amazingly often given suggestion from an audience. Can we have a suggestion of something someone might be doing? Filling out their tax return. It's like, why, when someone goes to see an improv show, do they ask to see scenes about filling out their tax return? It's a weird thing. Audience will often ask for things like that. Performers, like I was saying earlier, will often normalise something. So I had a scene where I said it's got to be inspired by a film, and someone gave the suggestion of Godzilla. And then one of the performers was absolutely determined, for some reason, that instead of there being a rampaging dinosaur that's threatening them with death for them and their scene partner, this one performer was adamant that the scene was going to be that they're watching a Godzilla film at the cinema. So the performers were now making up a scene about watching a film, which might be fine. But when you have the possibility, the potential that scene could have been about the rampaging dinosaur, I feel like they missed the opportunity. Instead of giving us the exciting thing, they were talking about, they were in a scene where they were talking about watching something exciting on a film, which then meant that the audience were watching people act out a scene where they are watching something exciting. Don't talk about something exciting, do something exciting. That's something I often promote as an idea. And so, I know I've been beating around and working up to this for the last few minutes, but that's okay. I don't mind that it's important often when teaching to paint a picture into people's heads so that they can see in their mind's eye why you justify the directions you give them, why the tips I give you are perhaps ones that you should listen to. Or, you may decide to go the complete opposite direction. Like I said, that's fine. But I ask you to put into your head, if you were going to see a film, if you were going to go see a play, read a book, listen to an audio drama, watch something on Netflix, would you choose to see people watching a film about a dinosaur, or would you go and see a film about a dinosaur? And I think you'd probably go see the film about the dinosaur. So, as you're on stage and you're in the moment, whatever they've given you, the audience, or whatever your scene partner has given you, think, okay, what can be a bold decision to make here? What can be big? What can be exciting? What can be funny? Sometimes what can be controversial? What can be something that's basically got a load of meat and juice and fat to chew into? So it's going to give you lots of stuff to work with. So let's take some ordinary things and say how you can punch them up. So we'll start with a man goes home after work and he's sat there to have a cup of tea. If I was in that scenario, I would think, okay, perhaps the tea is poisoned. Perhaps I get home and I am having an affair with someone at the office, and now my partner is going to find out. Perhaps, as I'm sat there alone in my chair, suddenly there's going to be a strange noise and a beam of light and I'm abducted by aliens. For me, I would probably do something to give this something that to me would make this worthy of being on the cinema screens. And I know this is what I mean, this is where it might be a bit controversial, because there'll be some improv directors, some improv teachers and some improvisers out there who'll be like, no, David, no. Why can't you just play the truth? Why can't you just, play the moment, play the reality? You don't have to come up with something big or bold or funny. You're trying too hard. Just do something ordinary and it will develop into something. And again, I'm not saying that is wrong, but today's podcast is about making bold choices. And maybe a bold choice would be to not try and make a bold choice and just to go with whatever you're given in the moment. But again, I'll put it to you. Would you go to see the film about the person having a cup of tea and then filling out their tax return? Or would you go to see the film where it's Liam Neeson chasing down people who have kidnapped his daughter, or Will Smith fighting the aliens, or Will Smith... Will Smith is a great example because he's done such a varied career. Often he'll be fighting aliens or robots or bad guys or terrorists or things like this, but then he'll have a few dramas in there. But even then, the dramas, there'll be that he's Muhammad Ali, he's a boxer who's trying to overcome the odds, who's putting in dedication, hard work, it's got a goal, it's got something he's driving towards. Or, what's that movie, 7 Pounds? It may be, I forget the plot of it, maybe his wife's died or something and he's got a kid. And there are challenges, there's things to overcome. It's not just a guy filling out his tax return. It's not just someone making a cup of Earl Grey. And especially, if you think of the audience's perspective, they've come to see your improv show. Now, maybe it's a one-person show, maybe it's a two-prov, maybe it's long form, or maybe it's short form. But imagine if everyone in the show thinks, right, first scene, excellent, we're doing a tax return. Second scene, we're painting the kids' bedroom whilst they're at school. Third scene, amazing, I'm a dinner lady at that same school. The next scene, it's okay, we are fixing the roof. And the next scene is we're going to see our parents in law who we're not that keen on. Now, these are all ordinary scenes, so after a while the accumulation of them will just feel that everything's a bit bland, everything's a bit plain, everything's a bit ordinary. Variety. So if you get one scene and it's about someone doing their tax return and you're on next, you can think, right, okay, in this next one we're going to break out the gunslingers. We're going to have the cowboys. We're going to have a horse chase. Horse chase, that sounds weird when you say car chase, but like horse riders and stuff like this. And we're going to do something big, bold, brash. We're going to make it exciting. And then this is this is the interesting thing with improv, is because there is no definite one answer. There is no one-size-fits-all solution to anything. So imagine if the first scene was about the tax return. The second scene was about the cowboys. Then do you make the third scene about the space invaders? The next scene about nuclear war? The next scene after that about the dinosaurs? The next scene after that about gosh knows whatever else, the magical fantasy land? Because after a while, all of these scenes being big, bold and dramatic might seem a bit too ordinary, where now you've set the expectation that everything's got to be big and bold. I'm not saying that you have to make everything big and bold, but there are lots of performers out there who will do a scene, and instead of giving the audience a scene about Star Wars where it's the Death Star and lightsabers and force powers, they'll go on stage and say, oh, I went to Comic-Con and I met the guy who played Luke Skywalker's stunt double. And it'll be like, okay, this might be an amusing scene. And to be honest, when I'm just saying that now, to me that does sound like an amusing scene. We've done a few Comic-Con style events with the show, and they're always great fun. But the point is, if I was given the choice between doing a scene which is characters fighting in outer space, saving princesses, and little green goblin men using their psychic abilities, or a scene about some people at an event where they're hot and sweaty in cosplay, buying comic books, I think I'd rather see the former. I'd rather see the one that's more exciting. So ask yourself in your head, what's the exciting thing I can do here? Am I going to make a cup of tea? Or is this cup of tea realistically a chameleon that's some monstrous object that's going to jump alive and try and suck out my brain? Because you can take it in that direction. Some people will feel too self-conscious about doing something big, brash, weird, out of the ordinary, and they will just do something safe. And, you know, that often does, I'm not going to get into people's personal lives, but often that will go into people's personal lives, where it's like, I always do the safe thing. If you're doing improv, that is a great release for people, a great opportunity to just do something crazy, just to do something weird and fun and silly, because ultimately within a few minutes the scene is over, it didn't really happen, it doesn't matter anymore. So if you've got that freedom to do that opportunity just to have fun, show something really creative, I would say take it. So let's quick fire now. I am going to be disciplined because I keep going off on segues as I get into these ideas. Let's take a few ideas of things that are ordinary and say how they could be ordinary, or how we could make some bold choices. So someone's filling out their tax return, and it could just be that, oh, we're going to go bankrupt tomorrow. And that might be exciting, but to me that's the expected idea, that's kind of obvious. Or it might be, oh, I'm not very good at maths, and that's kind of obvious. Or it could be, wait a minute, I've just realised that someone's been skimming money off, and then you've got potential to have some showdown with someone, have some confrontation. And it doesn't have to be like a bad conflict, it just needs to be a dramatic interaction. You've been stealing my money, suddenly there's a theft, you know, I'm going to get the police involved, and suddenly tax returns have gone to something exciting. You could have a scene about someone doing the gardening, and maybe the boring route to go, and I'm going to call it boring, the boring route to go would be, oh, there's lots of weeds, oh, and I'm allergic to chrysanthemums, and oh, the dog has been digging up the garden again. Or it could be the dog has been digging up the garden. My God, there's someone's bones here. Oh my God, it's my fiance's ex-husband. She killed him. She's a black widow, spider lady sort of thing, or whatever. She, you know, kills and eats and devours her lovers, and I'm going to be next. Or it could be, oh, what's this? It's some magic beans, and suddenly you're climbing up, and there's a giant and a princess and a goose that lays the golden egg, and there's something exciting. Or it could be, there's some buried treasure. You've dug something up, And look at this. This is a missing marine timekeeper watch, like in Only Fools and Horses, if anyone knows that sitcom. And I can now get £6 million out of what I've dug up here. You know, there's different potential. Let's look at another couple. Let's something ordinary. So I'm in a doctor's waiting room. That's such a typical standard suggestion you get for a location, a doctor's waiting room. And it could be that you're in a doctor's waiting room and you just have an ordinary conversation with the other character. Oh, what are you doing here? Oh, well, I've just getting my blood pressure checked. How about you? Well, you know, I've just been getting all of this tummy pains recently. Now, with something like this, you could go down the route of someone suddenly has a medical emergency, a heart attack or something, and someone has to perform CPR or something dramatic in that sense. Or it could be that, oh, I'm having a DNA test because it turns out that I was adopted, and so someone is my long-lost parents. Wait a minute, when were you born? Where were you born? You're my long-lost child. And suddenly out of a doctor's waiting room, you can have something super bold, something like a big dramatic thing, which could be the basis of a novel, the basis of a Netflix show, a basis of you know, a big blockbuster movie. There's loads of potential out there. You could have people on a train. Now, a train, how many people go on trains every day? Loads and loads of people go on trains, and for the most part, it's just getting from A to B. And if you think of, well, then there are train spotters who you always put on one of these nasally voices for, and they've got their anoraks and their lunch boxes, and they're wearing their spectacles, and they've got their binoculars so they can spot the trains, which, you know, sounds like a particularly dull pastime. But if you think of strangers on a train, if you think of Silver Streak, what's that? There's a great film, I think it's got Chris Pine or Denzel Washington or both, something like this, where there's a runaway train, a train that cannot be stopped. If you've seen the movie Speed, there's, I'm going to speed up the train, we're going to jump the tracks and stuff like this. Murder on the Orient Express, some people on an overnight train and there's a murder and someone on this train is a murderer and stuff like this. There's loads of ways to make something that seems perfectly ordinary into something big, bold and exciting. And like I said, if you're doing a short form show, or you're doing a long form which goes from one scene to another or something like this, where it's connected thematically scenes, or one scene inspires the next, it might seem a bit too much if you go from the space invasion to taking the ring of power to the pits of Mount Doom or something like this, and then to the cowboys, and then to Hogwarts, and everything is just big, everything is just bold, and you get numb to it. So that's something to be wary of. But I see too many shows and too many performers who'll do one scene where it's, right, I've got to do my homework. Next scene, it's like, oh, Christmas dinner is going to be ruined. Then the next scene, it's like, I've invented a new flavour of bubblegum. Well, that one actually sounds quite cool as well. But you know what I mean? It's just one ordinary thing after another after another. So mix things up. Just think, what are the possibilities? And a great way to do this, so here is a tip, is you need to get, I often will call it a mental thesaurus. And that's not perhaps the greatest way of explaining it, but it's the one I always go to. And let me just explain what I mean by it. So a thesaurus, you've got a word, and it might be the word hello. And it's like, okay, so what's a synonym? What's another way of saying hello? Hi, howdy, sup, and what's up, you know, lots of different ways of saying hello. And I will use that idea to put into people's heads of what's a different way of expressing an idea. And so you can have someone, if we say cooking, they could be cooking, they could be baking, they could be preparing food, peeling foods, or whatever. And they're all connected ideas. You don't just have to look at something and see one idea. Someone might be using a blender. They might be baking a cake. They might be plucking a chicken to that sounds a bit grim, but you know what I mean. There might be lots of different things they can do. And these might be not for words, but for ideas, synonyms of these ideas. These are connected ideas. And then you can also look at the antonyms, so looking at the alternatives, looking at the opposites. So if you're not eating food, maybe you're starving. Maybe the food is inedible, maybe it's poisoned, maybe it's plastic food. Just from this one idea, I'm completely thinking off the top of my head here, what's the similar connected ideas you can do, what's the complete opposite idea you can do, and what are the alternative ideas you can do. So I always go to my mental thesaurus, because it will give me the synonyms, it will give me the antonyms, and it will just help me come up with the connected ideas or the alternative ideas. So if we look at an alternative idea, if you can't have the food, then maybe right, I'm going to have to turn to cannibalism, so I'm going to have to eat my friend. That way you've got a dramatic scene out of it. Maybe it's over that I've invented a new protein, it's genetically modified in some way, and I've got something brand new there. So it's just like, don't just think, right, this is a scene about food, it's about cooking, so I'm going to make some omelettes or scrambled eggs. Come up with something else. Think of, right, what else could it be? If you're told that you're doing a scene about making scrambled eggs, and you suddenly said, okay, that's your starting point, but absolutely the eggs cannot be scrambled. You have to find an alternative. Very quickly, it'll be easy in a lot of people's minds to think, right, if they can't be scrambled, maybe they'll be boiled, maybe they'll be poached, maybe it'll be an omelette, maybe I'll have a raw egg. And if every single time, if you know the game New Choice, if every single time you get a new choice, it eliminates an idea and you have to come up with an alternative. You can do that for any idea yourself. You can think, okay, so this scene is very obviously going to be about scrambled egg. Maybe it's not about scrambled egg. Maybe when I crack the egg, there is a live chicken in there. A little chick comes out. Now it's a scene about a pet. Maybe you can say later on in the scene, you can new choice yourself and say, okay, what's the new choice? This isn't a live chicken. Oh my god, I've just noticed this chicken has scales. It's a dinosaur come out of that egg. And you can develop an idea just by thinking, well, if it's not what it seems to be right now, what can I do to punch it up? As I'm speaking right now, we did an Extreme Improv Extremed show last night, and we had a scene set at a chiropodist's. A chiropodist, if you don't know, is a foot doctor. I had to go to a chiropodist when I was about 6 years old, and it's a true story actually. But anyway, a scene set at a chiropodist, and we had the first. And I'm not saying anything here to critique. Well, no, sorry, to critique, not to criticise, not to put down any ideas, just to discuss something that happened in a real world situation. We had the first two performers played a father and son. And it's like, are we going to go see the chiropodist today? And no, Dad, I don't want to go. And eventually they kind of got there. And one of the performers was then, because it was what was the game? Questions only or single syllable showdown? I forget. Either way, it was a scene where, I think it was a single syllable game. A player could get eliminated and a new player joins the scene. When we had two new players in the scene, they were a father and son at the chiropodist as well, about, oh, I don't want to see the chiropodist today. It's like, guys, we've just had this. Mix it up. Don't just look at what other people have done, or don't just look at what's the most obvious thing to do with the scene about a chiropodist. Someone's got an appointment to see a chiropodist. Okay? Perhaps they don't want to see the chiropodist because they don't want to feel pain from having their foot poked about because it hurts. Okay, you've done that. Now do something else. And even if the first one, they could have felt like, well, this is just going to be something very ordinary. What can we do to make it more interesting? And we then had someone who came in and they were like, oh, I know this guy is really into feet, and it was a very weird scene. Admittedly, this perhaps isn't the best example for that, because it was a very weird scene. But it moved on to someone with a weird kink. I joined the scene, and I said about that I wanted to buy some new feet because my feet had been cut off. So I was then trying to convince the chiropodist character that since you've got access to feet, perhaps if we do a dodgy deal, you could get me some like bootleg feet. Bootleg feet. See what I did there? But anyway, you know what I mean. So we got some creative ideas out of what could have just been an ordinary situation, and especially in a game like that where there was about 8 different players coming in at different times, you don't want to be like, next appointment please. Well, I've got an ingrowing toenail. Okay, that player leaves, next appointment please. The next one comes in, it's like, well, I think I've got gout, next appointment please. And everyone's like, oh my god, it's just like, we don't care about the chiropodists. I would never choose to see a movie about just an ordinary day, everyday day in the life of a chiropodist. No one would ever do that. So don't give that to your audience. Give them something a bit more interesting. If you've got to do a scene about a chiropodist, make it where it's the person's got the foot fetish, or someone's trying to, steal all of the world's supply of toenails so they can build them into igloos or something like this. Just come up with some interesting ideas, some creative ideas. Improv will often go down a slightly weird route, and it will be that was wacky, that was quirky, because it's going to often be people trying to make something ordinary seem a bit more interesting, and often it will go a little bit strange for that. There's nothing wrong with doing some scenes that are a bit weird, a bit peculiar, a bit odd. There's nothing wrong with having some big, bold character choices. After the show, if you take ownership of what you've done, it'll probably be a talking point. Oh yeah, when you did this. Oh, wasn't that funny when we did that in this scene? Where did that come from? And it's going to be the thing that makes it more memorable. People go to a chiropodist or fill out their tax return in their everyday life. They don't want to just see everyday life. If they wanted to see everyday life, you could say, well, they'll watch a soap opera. Except that if you watch a soap opera, it's never everyday life. If people from the UK, or people are familiar with the British soap opera EastEnders, it's basically become like a gangster film now. Over the last 15 years, there's just been so many gangsters, mobsters, whatever, organised crime. This person's going to kill this person's going to kidnap this person and take this person away. And yet it's set at a pub, it's set at a laundrette, and yet there's all these things happen where, this person's got marijuana, and this person's stolen this, and this person's embezzled this money, this person's having an affair with this person. And you might think, oh my god, that's exactly the kind of thing I hate. I'd never want to watch EastEnders. I'd never want to watch a soap opera. But look how many millions of people do. Now, it could be that you see doing improv as the escape from that kind of thing and you want to give an alternative. Great, do that, but know that you will probably be doing it for a slightly reduced and niche audience. Because if you want to do successful improv, often a thing we'll say with extreme improv, and this isn't a set in stone rule, but it's a good rule of thumb, give the people what they want. People like going to the cinema and seeing the Avengers. People like reading mystery novels. People like reading adventure stories about spies and people who overcome tough challenges in their life. People won't go and get a book of stories about people who have painted their fence. You might get an instruction book on how to paint your fence, and you'll feel, as you're doing it, oh god, it's like watching paint dry, literally. But you won't just get a book about 101 stories, anecdotes of when people painted their fence. If anyone out there has written that book, or as a result of this podcast actually wants to write that book, send me a copy. I'd be very interested to give it a look. But seriously speaking, give people something exciting. Now, with this, the last thought I'm going to end on is, and I say this basically every single podcast, listen. You don't need to be the one to come up with all of the ideas. Your scene partner can come up with ideas, and then you can add to them, or you can just go along with their ideas. So if you're told that your scene is you're in the chiropodists, and someone says, Dad, I don't want to go to the chiropodist today, you could build on that, and you could say, well, you've got to go to the chiropodist, and you have an ordinary scene, or you could build on it by putting in something quirky and weird. Be like, but the chiropodist will use that laughing gas, and then we'll basically be in the Matrix or in Inception, and it'll be some other world. You could do that, and it would build on the other person's idea. But what you then want to be careful of is if someone says, well, the chiropodist has the anaesthetic gas, and it's going to put us into like a magical fairy world. You don't want to be like, well, I'm going to rob the chiropodist, and then the other player, the third player in the scene who's the chiropodist, will be like, well, I'm secretly a serial killer and I cut off their feet and eat them, or something like this. You don't want to all put in the big, bold ideas. You know, there's all of these different rules and these tactics and tips from improv. You need to know how to use them at different times to complement each other. You can't just everyone do all the same things or all different things all the same time. So a hugely important rule in improv is listen, listen, listen. If someone else in the scene has come out with a big, bold idea, perhaps support that, go along with it, yes and it. And then you'll be able to have a great scene out of it. But if no one has made a bold choice, then maybe, okay, I can make a bold choice. If one person's made a bold choice, then think, okay, we've got a bold choice, let's run with that. And with that, guys, I hope you have a great day. My name is David Postansky. You can find me personally on social media on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at David Postansky, which is spelled Pustansky. For Extreme Improv, we've got so many things to plug. The main thing, I suppose, for the skills show is, I will say, if you want to learn how to play over 100 short-form improv games, and then read along the way hundreds and hundreds of pro tips, literally hundreds of pro tips of how to perform improv successfully, then do check out the Extreme Improv Big Book of Improv Games, which is available from Amazon all around the world. So you can get it as a paperback, or you can get it as a Kindle edition. It's got, gosh, let me just have a look, because I've got it here. It's got over 270 pages, I believe. Yeah, let's have a look what it is. 272 or 273 pages. And it's got over 100 games, and it's got all these pro tips, and now the pro tips go along with the games, but they often cross over, so these tips will apply to so many games. They will apply to long form improv. They'll apply to performing on a stage. They will apply to performing on a podcast, on a streaming show. And so Amazon.co.uk if you're in the UK, and you can get the Extreme Improv Big Book of Improv Games on paperback or on Kindle editions. Amazon.com in the US, Amazon.ca if you're in Canada, and so on and so forth. Whatever your local Amazon website is for your country, you'll definitely be able to get it on Kindle, and in a lot of places around the world you'll be able to get the paperback edition. So do check it out. Let me know what you think. We're going to have more projects like that coming up in the future, more books and things to cover more games, just because it's had such a brilliant reception already. But anyway, other things. So this is Extreme Improv Skills Show. Whichever platform you're listening to it on, do feel free to take a moment to click the subscribe, give us a review if you've enjoyed the show. Go over to youtube.com/Extreme Improv and click subscribe there. The Skill Show podcast, all of our podcasts will end up posted there, in fact, and you'll be able to hear them on that platform if you want, on youtube.com/Extreme Improv. But you'll also be able to see tons and tons of our video content, as well as hearing the audio podcasts. So you'll be able to see a video version of our podcast improv show, which is the Extreme Improv Radio Rumble show. You'll also be able to hear the you'll be able to see the Extreme Improv Extremed shows, which come on a Wednesday and a Thursday at 8:30 p.m. UK time, our Friday matinee at 12 p.m. UK time, and our Revenge of the Werewolf long-form show on Fridays at 8 p.m. And these are all interactive streaming shows, so you can give us suggestions for the Revenge of the Werewolf show. You can ask us questions. You can vote on who you think the werewolf is. Loads of good stuff. We've got the Super Kick Mania Pro Wrestling podcast. We've got the Games Monster podcast, the Mega Movie podcast. We've got loads of great stuff going on. You can find out about all of these from our website, which is www.extremeimprov.co.uk, or from our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/extremeimprov, and of course just search Extreme Improv on Instagram, on TikTok, on Twitter. We've got all kinds of great content. So I think at that stage I will in fact wrap this up. So everyone out there, stay safe, stay happy, and most importantly of all, stay extremed.